Kristel, hi, welcome to the Female Startup Club podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Me too. I'm so bloody excited. I feel like it's pretty rare we get to interview women who have gone through the entire journey, start to finish, wildly successful exit type moment. So I'm excited to hear your journey, especially, the ups and the downs. Where do you like to start your entrepreneurial story?
I actually feel like in my teenage years, it already started. So I always joke that I was this weird teenager sitting at the dining table with my parents every night and just be like, why does this not exist? Why does this not exist? And every week I had other business ideas, several. And I sometimes think like, what must they have been thinking? Like, what is wrong with this girl? Like, why is she only talking about all the businesses she wants to start? And I had all the ideas.
Do you remember any of those ideas?
One was really random. Like I wanted to personalize my own calendar. Right? You know how you for school always bought your own calendar. And I was like, I just want to personalize it. I want to have my own pictures in it and this and this. And I don't want to just get a random one.
Yeah, I mean, it makes total sense. I love that.
Yeah, so those kind of things. I think that's already where it started. And then I actually played a lot of tennis and I had a string machine. So I started, stringing rackets for other people. So I was always like doing little things to make money. And then there's this, and I actually never talked about this, but in Holland, you have something called King's Day. That is a day where everyone goes on the street and kind of just sells their stuff and drinks a lot and parties and all those things and wears only orange clothes.
It's orange, right? Yeah.
Great day to go. If you ever want to see it, it's quite a thing. When I was young, what you used to do is, you get all your stuff and you would sell it. And what I would do, I would bake pancakes. So I would like get the eggs, I would get the flour and kind of, figure out what were my costs and then try to sell as many pancakes as I could. So it is like those kind of moments, I think, in my upbringing that really this kind of sparked that idea of like, I like to sell something.
Did you get that from your parents or was it just intrinsically inside of you?
I don't know. So my dad does have his own business. He has a pharmacy and he got that from his parents. My mom didn't necessarily have her own business. My grandma, I learned, did have her own business. So I'm like, she had a store back in the days, which is pretty cool. I'm like, oh, cool. That's really cool, grandma.
She's a bowler.
Yeah. So, maybe just seeing it around me, yes, a little bit. But then at the same time, I think it's something that also was just in me.
I love that. So how do we transition from you selling your pancakes at King's Day and selling whatever you could sell and your startup ideas to creating your super?
I studied in the US, so I'm Dutch, studied in the US, then I did my master's in London. And then during that time, my boyfriend, who I met actually in college in the US, he's German, he got cancer. And that was just such an aha moment, I think, for both of us. I was 22, he was 24, he just finished college. And it was just like, you're like, okay, I thought I was on top of the world and then you're not. And I watched the movie Forks Over Knives. I turned plant-based the next day. I was always already kind of this health nut because I had eczema growing up. So like I knew from a young age, okay, I either get a rash when I eat this or I don't get a rash when I eat this. So the connection between health and my body was something I was like, okay, I get that it's there. So yeah, turned plant-based. For him, it was really after. So he had surgery, he went through chemo. And it's interesting, right? Because you go for chemo, you're cancer-free then. But he was not healthy. And that was such an interesting turning point for him because then he was suddenly open. And I was like, okay, we're going to do a detox. I'm going to give you all the juices. I'm going to give you this and this. And I was a crazy superfood lady. I had this cabinet full. And, I know there are more people like me out there where I had 30 different bags. And every morning I was scooping like a maniac. I was like, barley grass, wheatgrass, chia seeds, maca, this. And, it was fine for me. It was like, it was a lot of scooping. And I kind of just dragged him to Whole Foods and was like, okay, you need wheatgrass, you need spirulina, you need this, and you need this. And he was like, okay, wait a second. What are all these names? This is really expensive and no, thank you. So what I did instead, I had this empty jar and just kind of scooped a bunch of green things, especially for him, together. And I said, whatever you do, just take this every single day. He just after the detox and using the superfoods, right? He was very skeptical because he was this meat eating German. He really started to feel better. And he was like, oh, this is very interesting. Like, I feel so much better. And from there, like it's, you start to research, then you actually look into superfoods, right? Because people are always like, oh, it's such a trend. Is it going to stay? And it's just like, nothing. It's nothing new.
Yeah, these are ancient practices.
Exactly. If you look at Ayurveda, if you look at Eastern medicine, if you look in, South America, these ingredients have been used for thousands and thousands of years. So I also always say with your super, it's not that we do anything new. We just look at, like some of those traditions and like how these ingredients have been used and how we can kind of just resurface them and make it a little bit easier for people, to use them. So, but basically at that point, we realized, okay, there are a lot more Michaels in the world, right? I talk to friends and they're like, yeah, I'm very interested in, using acai, but what is it actually? How do I use it? And from there, we kind of just started. And how we started is that we had a small little place close to Amsterdam. We had a certified organic room in that little apartment, which we somehow created, and it got actually certified, which was really funny. Just in our own apartment, we started ordering superfoods initially from a wholesaler, because we ordered like 5-kilogram bags and mixed everything by hand together. That was really how your super was born, right? Really, the goal and our mission has always been, how do we help people improve their health with the power of plants? And superfoods are just a very easy and convenient way to do it. And basically, we developed these mixes with 5-6 ingredients, and that's it. No stevia, no fillers, nothing else added. Just, very simple plant-based organic ingredients that are really powerful and pack a punch. And we then developed these different benefits, right? So we have Forever Beautiful for your skin. We have Super Green with your greens, but then also other ones now. A really popular one is Moon Balance for hormone balance, right? So really looking at like, what is the benefits you need and what are some of the ingredients that can support with that.
I love that. I love that so much. In that early time when you have to think back to kind of like the money piece of the puzzle, were you thinking about savings? Did you take a loan, a credit card, friends and family? Like, how did you get started and how much did you invest to get to that kind of launch point of selling these products?
Yeah, so Michael still had a job. So we sometimes joke, and his only job he had, which was 1 year at Accenture. So we sometimes joke Accenture was the first kind of ambassador.
The investor.
I never actually had a proper job, which is also funny. And we were just talking about it during breakfast. It's like, it's almost good to be naive. I think it's a superpower, because I didn't know anything. I didn't know how to manage people. I didn't know anything really about margins. I just didn't know anything. And I think there's a beauty to that as well, because if I now, go back 10 years and I'm like, I know everything I know now, would I started the business again? I'm like, I don't know, right? So it's so interesting. But the money piece, I think we had a couple of things going for us. I think we were very young. I was 23. I was not used to the income. I lived a very, simple, basic life in that sense.
Yeah, you can be frugal.
Right? I didn't have kids. I didn't have a mortgage. So I think that helps, right? I didn't have that pressure of like, oh, I need to make money right away because I have all these expenses. So I think that was one advantage, just starting that young. And then I think the other piece of it, what I did do over at some point was, so first it was kind of Michael's salary. I lent a little bit of money from my parents. I think it was around, 30,000, and something I also paid back afterwards. And that's kind of how we started the first year. And basically what we did, we would buy very small amounts of superfoods, would mix them by hand together, and then go to farmers markets in the weekend. And we did that for a year, where we just like mixed, during the week. And then we went to Holland, and in Germany as well. We went to different, veggie markets, health markets, all kinds of different markets, and just started selling the products. And it was very interesting because you learn so much by doing this, because we started to talk to potential customers, right? And then the questions they were asking. And it was very interesting because people were asking us, not even like what are superfoods. They were just like, oh, what is a smoothie? How do you make a smoothie? And I was like, oh, we have a long road ahead of us. This is going to be quite a ride.
There's an education piece here that I need to focus on.
Yeah, so that was like something we learned right away. Then obviously about taste you learn, and you learn so much by hearing what they're asking. And we started selling online right away as well. Like we had a little Shopify shop 10 years ago that we built up. We used to ship right away worldwide, which was really funny. And we're shipping worldwide. It's funny because in the end, it really helped us. So basically what we did is that we saw that quite some orders over time were coming from the US, like 5 to 10%. And that then really actually helped us to make the decision to then say, okay, hey, we're also going to shift to the US. It was a very small amount, right? Like the total orders were not a lot, but it always gave us a sense of like, hey, where's the product resonating? Hey, we have some customers to call up. So I think that really, again, very naive. And did we make any money on those orders? Absolutely not. But
maybe a loss. If you have to think about those kind of early years, that handful of years, getting to your first 1,000 customers, getting to kind of proven concept, the ball is rolling. What are the key things that shifted the needle for you? Or what are those key pivotal moments where you were like, we're onto something really good here?
So one of the earliest things, because it always comes down kind of to marketing, right? So from the farmers market, we did raise a little bit of money then from friends and family. And it was really funny. I think we raised 100,000 and we thought we're set. We never have to raise money again. This is it. We did one production run. And we started with 7 products, 7 SKUs, which is crazy. And anyone starting a business, I would highly recommend not starting with 7 SKUs. Start with 1, start with 3 maybe, but like that's it. Because the more SKUs, the more you need to produce. And then, the more you need different products ingredients you need to buy. So it's packaging. It just makes everything so much more expensive and complicated. And again, we just didn't know, right? So, we used 7 products. From there, we raised a little bit of money, and then we really focused on those early days of Instagram. We just, did barter deals. So we would just send products to like Instagrammers. And that's also actually then how it, I think, spread to the US.
The golden days of Instagram.
But I have to say, it's funny. We just brought out a book. Right. And I kind of just went back to, thank you. You're super live if anyone wants to check it out. But I kind of just went back to the grassroots where I was like, okay, I just want to send this book to as many people as possible. Right. And I know maybe not everyone posts about it, but like, I still think I can get like, let's see to how many people I can send it without having to pay huge amounts of money. And funny enough, there's still a lot of people out there with big followings who, if they're truly interested in a book or in a product, they're still gonna, take your free product and post about it. But it's tedious work, right? You have to write a lot of people, and a certain percentage is only gonna write back, and then only a certain percentage is gonna give you their address. It just takes a lot of work to just write hundreds and hundreds of people and then follow up after you send the book. So I think those are the pieces where it's still possible. Right. And like, what is your messaging? Like, what are you writing then? Is it like super impersonal, or is it like a very personal message and they have the feeling like an actual person versus an agency is writing them? I think those things all make a huge difference.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The human touch, relationships, like it's going to be much more impactful to take that personal touch with someone and connect with someone on a genuine level. So you said you raised the 100,000 friends and family, you got a bigger kind of product order, you were doing their influencer marketing. What was your vision at that point? Because you're still kind of in your mid 20s, early 20s.
Yeah.
Could you have envisioned where you got to?
No, I think my vision was actually to lay on the beach. I don't know why. It's like I start this business and a year later I'm traveling and I'm laying on the beach and I'm just like I'm like, what was I thinking? They say that you work more when you start your own business. It's like, by the way, it's true, right? You work more hours, you work harder. Obviously you get to decide and it's your own choice. I still think it feels different. But, like I think especially when we hired even interns, right, that hired our first employees, I think there was a sense of responsibility that I never felt at that age before, or I was like, I am responsible for their salary, right? And their living. And I think that those kind of things like make you grow up really quickly. I was like, okay, I'm responsible for this. I think from there, it really, we made so many mistakes and so many funny things too, right? A hilarious story is when we were mixing at our house, we used to order these canisters. We still use the same canisters. There's just now, another recycled paper label around it. Back then they just used to look like toilet rolls, basically. We put a sticker on it. But they would come to our house, a tiny little street somewhere in Amsterdam, with a huge truck, and they're like, where's the loading dock? I'm like, no loading dock here.
It's here and it's with me.
This is the door, and this is where the pallet needs to go through, which obviously didn't fit through the door.
And this is the worker.
So it's those kind of things that just completely went wrong. we raised money, we ran out of money very quick. And it's often not even that you're, I think in the early days, it's not even that we were unprofitable, right? It's just cash, right? Like you buy inventory. And I think those kind of things, like really managing your cash, I think is something not necessarily easy. And I think it is going to go really, really quick. I think the one thing we kind of were then at that point where we're like, also before you start to raise money. And I think that's for everyone something, really to think about, because I don't think you need to raise money, right? And it's just it's a choice. Like, what type of business do you want to build? I think the moment you make the decision to raise money, right? You're not only working for yourself anymore. I think that's something really important to realize. Two, it comes with certain expectations, right? People invest the money and they want actually to see a return. They often want to see faster growth. So there's so many of those pieces. And I remember that Michael and me were kind of sitting together and we're like, okay, like, what do we want? Do we want a smaller business, be 100% in control and like grow slower? Or do we want to actually have a bigger business and actually have and this is really what for us was the decision of like, hey, we want to go this route. We just had in our mind, we're like, we want to just reach as many people as possible. We want our impact to be as big as possible because we want to help as many people as possible to be healthy. So we're like, okay, let's just go all in. And that was really at that time what felt right for us. It's not the only way to build a business. And I don't think it's necessarily the right way. I think for everyone, it's different. And I think there's also a beauty now having gone through this, right? I think there's also a beauty in moving a little bit slower and finding more your traction in a more, organic way. Just something to think about and to know that it's really a choice to make for yourself and to figure out, okay, like, what is it that I want?
Yeah, it really requires a personal audit, an audit of yourself, your life, your strengths, your weaknesses, everything really. At what point was this in the timeline? Like, what year are we talking when you're kind of like, let's go for it?
So we started, that was 2014 we started. 2015 we raised friends and family. And then I think it was 2016 when we raised money from 500 startups. So I want to say like that was really the moment you start taking like more VC money in, and then it's just different. And that changed things, yeah.
The good only, or also some of the worst?
I think it's both. I think one of the cool things we did with 500 startups, and I think that really helped me along my journey, is that it's always easier said than done, right? But what other things can VCs give you than just money? Basically with them, we had a month where they called it a dojo, where we had basically a month-long e-com training. So we learned about all your KPIs. I learned about how to run my own Facebook ads, Google ads, SEO, like I literally everything. And, email marketing. And also just someone explaining you what are the metrics to be looking at? Like what should you optimize? If you optimize a landing page, what is kind of the percentage of, traffic you're looking for? So it was a lot of those kind of things. And I think it was a lot, right? After that month, I was just kind of like, okay, there's a lot of wheels spinning in my head. But it's interesting because like about 9 months after that, that is kind of where we, started to crack then Facebook and how we could actually run that. And really simple things, right? Like our AOV was always too low. Right. So therefore, it was very hard, with our CAC of, an acquiring customer and a low AOV to just break even. And actually, our goal was always on the first order, can we break even? Because, right, then at least we don't lose money. And from there, you can actually then scale instead of just acquiring and only relying on future customers. Somehow that just never really made a lot of sense in our head. So what we learned then is that we started to bundle more of our products, create programs around it, created, for example, the detox bundle, and really started to advertise more of that, within the funnel, really focus on that bundle. And suddenly our AOV went from $50 to like, $100, $120. It's like, oh, this is kind of an unlock.
This works.
And I think another piece that we really learned, so we went to the US beginning 2018. I'll come back to that. What I want to say, one other thing we really learned is that we really started to talk about our personal story. So before 2018, we never talked about Michael's cancer story. We never talked about our personal journey. We just focused on product, because we're like, we love our products. They're the best. Let me tell you all about the benefits, right? But we never talked about our own story. And somehow we came across several people And someone kind of interviewed us and helped us to shape our story and just put it in clear words instead of, just all over. We had this one interview on Cheddar TV, and I started to run that as an ad. And it just it worked so good. I was like,
it's powerful.
I need to talk about her story. It's like, I get it now.
Another unlock.
Major unlock. And what I want to say about, so in 2017, we were only in Europe still, basically, and we were really struggling. We, as a business in Europe, I think we were extremely early on the market. Again, like I said, people didn't even have blenders at home, didn't know how to make smoothies. And there were we trying to sell superfoods. We actually met someone else at a fair, actually one of the founders from Four Sigmatic, funny enough. They're like, we were way too, no one wanted to buy mushrooms in Europe. So we just went to the US. And that was like kind of this moment for us. We're like, wait a second. You're from Europe and you went to the US. They're like, if you can do this, like we can do this too. And if you think there are not a lot of European businesses that go from Europe to the US, right? It's very often the other way around. We're also not that we were so successful in Europe, right? So because even our early investors were like, you're not going to go to the US. Like you first need to be a proper business and bigger in Europe before you're allowed to go there. And we were just kind of like, well, they did it. And we're like, it feels right. We both studied there. We're just going to figure it out. We're going to raise money in the US. It was funny. Every time we tried to raise money in Europe, we talked to investors there, and it's very different environment. They only were talking about risks. And I think we were at the time trying to raise like 500K. And they were like, why do you need this money for? And then in the US, we started to raise 217 also in the US at the same time. And it was so interesting because if we would say we raised 500K, nobody wanted to talk to us. We needed to raise a minimum $1 million. So we started to raise there $1.5 billion because otherwise nobody wanted to talk to us. And they only wanted to talk about all the opportunities and how big the market is and, all the upside. And I was just like, isn't this so fascinating how different the mindset is, between those two places. So a lot of things that happened, and we kind of went then. We were raising money in the US. We were still living in Berlin at the time. And it was funny because we would say we also would live in LA and work at a co-working space. But we would just be flying back and forth.
Back and forth.
We did have, to be fair, our fulfillment was set up in the US, but we didn't live there. We just kept flying back and forth.
Yeah, I'll be there for a meeting tomorrow. 100%.
Literally what happens, like, oh, you want to, we're in LA, we would love to, we did a couple pitch competitions. So we started to build up a little bit of network, meet some people. They're like, oh, we want to meet with you in LA because that's where you are. And we're like, okay, we'll see you next week. Yeah, in your office. I'm like, no, the co-working space is a little loud. We did a cafe. So a lot of funny stories, but right, it's interesting because US investors don't want to invest, at least at that time, right? If we would not be based in the US, they didn't want to invest in us. So like, I think and obviously we did move to the US, right? Once we knew, okay, we're going to raise this round, we moved actually to the US to really be there and build a business. But it was a really funny experience. And we're like, sometimes you have to be a little smart with we're like, okay, we know we're going to live here, but we're not there yet.
You've got to take the calculated jump. I read that at some point you reached the 200 million revenue mark, and that's what prompted you to start looking for an acquisition or an exit. And I want to kind of shift gears a little bit to talk about what happened next. Like, when was that? When did you start being like, right, we've hit this number. What does that look like now? Why now do we sell? And just what that time was like for you.
So it was 200 cumulative. So we got to I just want to clarify that for anyone listening. We got to around 60, 70 million a year revenue. And it was actually a really interesting time. I think at some point, I got tired because the business scaled really, really fast. And that's kind of what I said in the beginning, right? There are advantages and disadvantages. Obviously, there's this beauty. We were able to scale so fast with Facebook ads, so fast. But that's just the selling part. Everything else, right? From our team scaled from we were 15 people. At some point, we were 100 people. And this is all in the time span of like 2-3 years. You need to learn how to manage. I had a team of 50 people under me. So,
Wow.
so many things. Suddenly you need to, we were producing products in Europe as well as in the US. And it's funny, as the US started to scale, it's almost like Europe slowly, a year later, started to catch up, and they suddenly knew what smoothies were, that they wanted superfoods, right? So both,
I have a blender now.
You have a blender now. It's interesting because obviously we had teams in Berlin, we had teams in LA. How do you build the org structure? I think there were so many things that we kind of had to figure out. It's such a short period of time that we're just sprinting. And I'm forever grateful for all the lessons learned, because there were a lot of them.
Like what?
I learned, by the way, that I don't want to manage a team of 50 people because it's not for me.
Again, back with the self-audit, what you thrive in doing and what you don't thrive in doing.
Yeah, I really learned about myself that I love being creative, right? So I actually like writing the copy. I like working in the team, working on the ads, and like really be in the creative, doing the formulations of products and thinking about the branding. Like, that's me. But that's not your job when you're, a CMO of a team of 50 people. Because my job was, to set the vision, the goals, and to empower the team to do all those things. And I was just like, I want to do them myself.
Let me get in there and do it.
That's just like one thing. So many more. I think you learn a lot about yourself. And I think that piece is really, really important. But how do you know if you don't do it all, right? So I'm also a huge fan of, sometimes it's okay to just like kind of just do it all and feel what feels right. And I had kind of it's the beauty that I got to learn of like, oh, this is what I like, this is what I don't like. And I didn't know before. So it was good. But yeah, a lot had happened. We scaled very quickly, right? When we went to the US, we only did like 500K in sales. And then we kind of went to like 5 million to 30 million, 70, right? So it went super fast.
Whoa, crazy.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy. It's funny, when you're in it, it felt kind of normal. But now looking back, I'm like, that was crazy. And I don't want anyone to listen to this and compare yourself to it. I think I would even recommend to go slower, right? Because I think we made more mistakes in the end because it was going so fast as well. And I think, like I said, like I was getting tired, right? Because like that speed of growth, and like I was working so much. And it's funny, right? I'm running a health and wellness business, and I was like, I had a hard time taking care of myself at the same time. And it was not that I was super unhealthy, but I was just working too much. A lot of lessons there. And I think that's kind of where, Michael, we were like, hey, is this the right time to sell? I think the other piece of it, investors will start to demand it too. We had a hard time also with the iOS. So like with the iOS changes, we saw that we're like, oh, we cannot keep scaling like this. We did launch then in retail, right? So we actually only were a D2C business. Only 5% Amazon, 95% our own website, and then started to focus more on Amazon, went into retail as well. But then it was also where like investors were like, hey, it's time, right? It's because you can scale as fast. And I think that's kind of where the piece comes in from. You have to, it is a choice, and you're not 100% in control anymore. I think that's a decision you have to make. It's like, hey, if you start getting VC money in, the expectation is that you sell at some point too. So it is different in that sense versus like building something you want to hold on to the rest of your life.
Absolutely. For sure. Absolutely. I guess it's hard to know at the beginning of the journey, but then in hindsight, you're able to look back and have so many learnings, obviously. How long did the process take when you were like, okay, maybe we should sell this? The investors are also wanting to sell, to actually kind of like contract is done, things have been transferred?
Years.
Yeah.
Years. At least I would say 1.5 years. It's a long process. And I was pregnant at that time too.
Oh, wow. Superwoman.
No, so I wasn't actually, but Michael was really good. So I really, at that point, actually, I did keep working, but I started to slow down because I really felt that being pregnant is great, but you also are more tired already. So, and I didn't want to be one of those. And everyone makes their own choice. This was a decision for myself where I was like, I don't want to be the person who is in a call while I'm in labor. Like, I'm not that person. It's like, if I do something, I'm truly doing it, right? So I was like, if I'm pregnant, I'm pregnant. So I actually let really go more there, whether that was, within the marketing, but also like with, really trusting Michael to like actually lead more in that process. And we didn't talk so much today about it, but like we were very good actually also in splitting tasks. I was very much in like more marketing, product development side. And marketing really means, we were D2C, right? So I was selling. And Michael was actually then supply chain, finance, HR, but also all investor relationships. It's interesting because I think, as we know, women raising money is so much harder. And I've experienced it too, right? Where we were both sitting in the room, we would have a conversation and people would literally like only look at him, talk to him. I would say something, they would repeat the question to him. And I was like, this is crazy. Right. And you just kind of feel it sometimes where they're like, oh yeah, she's just a creative person, but he's actually the business guy. So we're going to talk to him. It's horrible. I just saw how much easier it was for him. And I'm always a huge fan of this, like, let's use our strength where they are.
Yeah.
So yes, I talked to every investor that ever invested, first kind of as a gut check. And I think, by the way, that is our superpower as women. Our intuition is so powerful. And I think we just kind of got taught not to listen to it, right? Because we need to be rational and we just kind of need to use our right brain and be logical. And I'm a huge fan of really learning and trusting your intuition because it's powerful, whether it's with hiring, whether it's with investors. If something feels off, and, I've made those calls where I'm like, yeah, but then I start to rationalize in my head, but this is a great person on paper and this, and they're going to be great, but something feels off, right? And I ignore it. Never worked out. So listen to your intuition.
And it's always the case. And in hindsight, you're like, damn it, I knew that. I knew it. But I was hoping. It was too much in that hope, like it's going to be fine.
Yeah. And it's just so interesting, right? Because your mind just starts to take over and make up all the stories why it's going to be great and all those things. And if I learned one thing, and I sometimes feel like it's not really talked a lot about, but it's like your intuition is such a powerful tool in business as it is in life, right? And I think it's just like really use it.
100%. Totally agree. I'm wondering what life is like for you now. Are you guys totally out of the business? You've had some time to decompress, deprocess what's happened over the last almost decade?
Well, I'm a lot of time mom, actually. So I don't know if I've really relaxed, but
you went from this to that.
No, I'm really enjoying that process, actually. And I have a little one. He's like 8 months old now. And I think that's a whole new learning in itself. I'm the more the obsessive type, I think. So like even when I was pregnant, I read, I think 15 books. I know about everything there is to know about natural birth, about the pregnancy process, postpartum. I know everything about plant-based baby food now. So it's really fun actually to just like dive into new topics again and really doing that. We're still in the business. So we're still, I'm not full time. So I'm helping like basically I'm face of the brand and like helping really with where I can. And actually my favorite part is just connecting to customers because that's always has been my favorite part. One of the things actually we did in the past, I used to do calls with customers and just video calls, random, just to like talk to them and understand what they need, who they are, how they live their lives. And I think that is the piece that really helped me truly understand them, right? Because in e-com, it's so easy to just kind of, you think you know your customer, or it's like, do you really know them? So we had this Facebook group and I did a lot of, just Zoom calls, and I would even record them to hear their story so I could share it also with the team. And some of those pieces we even used in ads when I got permission, right? So it went from not just sharing our story, but also sharing stories from customers. And yes, there were not pretty videos, but they were real, right? And I think there's a beauty to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, back to storytelling and your story as well. It's so powerful to hear from real people experiences that you can relate to, really. With everything that you've learned in the last almost decade, what is your kind of key learning, takeaway, piece of advice, piece of wisdom that you can pass on to other early stage founders or women who want to start a business who are listening in to this episode?
I think just do it. right? I was actually talking to my sister yesterday, and she's thinking about, maybe starting something. And I saw the hesitation. I was just like, because you have to really trust yourself. You have to really have that kind of just like, you're betting on yourself, right? And I just want to, trust yourself. You don't need to know everything. You don't need to know step 100 if you're not at step 1 yet, right? Just take it one step at a time, and just know by not knowing, it's actually your superpower, right? It's a good thing that you don't know yet. Just start, and you're just going to figure it out. We never had a business plan, by the way. We just kind of started and just, figured it out along the way. You make mistakes, you make a decision, and then you make another decision to, course correct. And just trust yourself. Just do it and have fun with it. I think that's my one thing that I wish I could have told myself 10 years ago, is that I think sometimes I took it too serious and just like go, go, go. And it's really the journey that is actually, I look back at some of those moments, I'm like, oh, this was so much fun. But I think the moment, those highlights, I was already like with the next step, right? But like have those celebrations and really enjoy the ride as well.
Yeah, I love that. Cherish the day to day.
Yeah, there were a lot of tips in one. Sorry.
I mean, I'm here for it. I loved it all. I'm like, give me more. We are up to the 6 quick questions part of the episode. Some of them we might have touched on, some of them we might not have, but I asked them all the same and they go into part 2 of the episode. So question number 1 is, what's your why today? Why are you waking up every day and still putting your time and energy into your super?
My why has never changed. My why is really to improve people's health with the power of plants. And I think that's something, I know it's the same for Michael. And we even feel that whatever we were doing, even afterwards, the why is the thing that always will stay constant. It has never been the why of the company. It is the why, that's kind of in our heart. And we're going to like bring that forward and think of other ways to do that, right? Like the book is kind of was for us also, that is part of our why. We're like, okay, we want to do the book, like Your Super Life, that is actually not using your super mixes, but really just about plant-based eating and how we basically live our life. And yeah, we're thinking about other ways. So we're like, what are other ways how we can inspire people to eat more plant-based?
I love that. Question number 2 is, what's been your favorite marketing moment so far?
That's a good question. I actually know. My favorite campaign that we ever did was for Moon Balance, which is a hormone balancing mix. And I just remember when we made those ads and I shared my story why we created the mix. Like I had, PMS, and PMS is actually a sign, right? It's not, your hormones are out of whack. It's not something that should be normal. And we kind of just shared, right, the journey of hormones, and like the ads were like a talking forum. All women were like, yeah, I have this, or I'm in perimenopause, I'm experiencing this. And it was just like such an aha moment where it's like, oh, by me sharing and talking about hormones, every woman is actually going through something and wants to also talk about her hormones and share it. And it, aside from the selling part, like just to have that moment to like see all women opening up and kind of just coming together and confirming what they were experiencing, I was like, wow, this is powerful.
Oh my gosh, I love that. It's funny because as you said that, I was thinking like about my own experiences and troubles that I've had with my like hormonal health. And so I can immediately see how that discussion just always needs to be open and there and present for women to be able to be like, this is what I'm experiencing. Talk to me.
It's normal, right? So one of the things actually we did in the company is we started Moon Days. And Moon Days are a month, right, where you do what you can. So if you have your period, you basically can take a day off. You can cancel your meetings. We always just say you do what you can do. And I actually did a TED talk on this, and it has been so fun because like, it's so interesting to see the reactions on both ends. And some people are like, this is completely unnecessary. Why do all women need an extra holiday? I'm like, this is not a holiday.
Oh my God.
Why can they not take a sick day? I'm like, they're not sick. They have their period. You're not sick. It's actually a sign of health. So many of those things, right? And it's so interesting where you can think of like, oh, do women actually misuse it? And what we have seen is like, absolutely not. There's some women who really need it. We're so grateful that it's there. And then the women who don't need it, they just don't use it, right? It's just really that simple.
100%. I feel like that's the kind of stuff that strengthens loyalty in a team. Like, that's just so key. That's what every company needs.
I agree. And that's just, women are powerful, right? We don't even really, we just pretend. We go to work, we pretend we don't, even have a period. where they actually show that period cramps are actually as painful as having a heart attack. I'm just like, imagine a man at work having a heart attack. You think he's going to pretend he's fine? Like, I don't think so.
Oh my God. Women are superheroes. Question number 3, what is your go-to business resource? Where are you learning or upskilling or consuming great content at the moment?
Great question. One of my favorite ones was, and still is How I Built This, the podcast, I think, from Guy Raz. I think that's something I really enjoyed. Also, always listening to all the stories there. I think another piece is just like, actually, over the years, I always switched, like whether it was then certain books, then it was Russell Brunson, then I was Tony Robbins. And I think the one piece that I want to remind everyone of is that it's not just your practical skills, right? Of like building a funnel, your Facebook ads. I think some of the most growth in a company happened because I worked on my own mindset, right? When I worked on my personal growth and really changing, just like working on me and what's happening on the inside. Because I think we're always our own, as a founder and as a business owner, you are the cap, you are the bottleneck of the business. So you really need to work on yourself in order to kind of just open up, change your perspective, and to keep growing.
I love that. Thank you so much. That was so cool. Question number 4 is, how do you win the day? What are your AM and PM rituals and habits that keep you feeling happy and motivated?
I love this question also. So I'm a huge morning routine person. And for years, every mom was always screaming at me, like, just wait until you have kids. Just wait until you have kids. So I have a baby now and I have slightly adjusted. Basically what I do is that I have a list of like 8 to 10 things that I know make me feel really good. Right? So that can mean going for a walk. That means Pilates. That means drinking water. That means meditating. That means taking a bath, a massage, like just things that I know, or drinking a smoothie in the morning. And basically what I do is that nowadays I just know I need to be flexible, right? Sometimes it depends who is watching Leo. Sometimes it depends when he wakes up, what he needs. So I just try to tick off as many as I can throughout the day of things that I know make me feel good. And if I have a day where I don't feel as good, I try to tick off more, right? So I think that's really the piece that I really focus on now, because I know I cannot always just have time for myself right away, but I make sure I hit those moments throughout the day.
Another cracker. You're crushing these answers. I love it. Question number 5, what's been your worst money mistake in the business and how much did it cost you?
Okay, well, the first, I don't know if this is the worst one. It's probably not. But one was we were like, we need a professional looking ad. We need to invest in like high production versus, our iPhone stuff. And we shot the ad. I think it was 100K. It absolutely didn't do anything. Nothing. I was like, okay, back to the iPhone ads we go.
Oh my gosh.
So that was one. And I'm sure there's a ton more from another really funny one is that we did sell those cans, but we, on the front of a new packaging, instead of Le Kuma, it said Le Muma. So it was a little spelling mistake for, I think, for our designer, whatever happened. And I know she will never forget this one either. And it was just so funny because then you would suddenly get like influencer videos back who are like talking as experts about, the product and ingredients. And they're like, and there's Le Muma in here. And I was like, oh no. So also there's so many funny things. And, in the moment, they always feel like it's life or death. And you're like, oh my God, we're never going to survive this. This is so bad. Like you kind of just like, under the table. And now I look back and I'm just like, it's just funny at this point.
It's a lull moment. Last question number 6, and you've shared so many already, but what is just a crazy story, good or bad, you can share from building your business?
I think maybe just a really good one. One of my favorite things that we did in the business is that we used to visit farmers. And we basically, because sourcing was such a big thing for us, and I think it's important for everyone, especially if you sell food, right? Because we learned pretty early on that wheatgrass from China is very different from wheatgrass from Germany. And so what we used to do is that we, we only worked with, basically at some point we didn't buy from wholesalers anymore, but we bought directly from people in the country where the ingredients were originally grown. And we only would work with them if we were allowed to visit. So we went, for example, to Peru, we went to Brazil, and we got to meet with like often the co-ops and then actual farmers and see how they live, how they used ingredients, right? So acai You know how we have this amazing acai bowl? It's very sweet, very delicious, all these things. Acai is very bitter, and they actually have it next to their rice as kind of like acai puree juice, and it's not sweet at all. It's just a bitter purple kind of thing next to their rice. And I was just like, those things, to learn how they use it, how they actually, and for so many years, right, and the traditions around ingredients from, from the farmers themselves, and hear their stories and why they grow organic and all those kind of things. There's so many highlights, because actually you don't even think about it, right? But like the impact you have and can have if you source the right way is massive.
Wow. That is blowing my mind. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. I've loved learning about your story and your journey and what you've been up to. This was so much fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And it was a lot of fun stories, a lot of ones I haven't talked about yet. So it was amazing.